right, so hello YouTube. First of all, we're going to do a game analysis of the two World Cup games that were played today, August the 4th, in the final for the first place and the final for the third place. The one between Magnus Carlsen and Fedoseev, and the final that is going to, well, basically determine who's going to be the winner of the World Cup between Duda, who eliminated Magnus Carlsen, and Karjakin. You see, I'm forgetting basic things. All right, we're going to start with the finals game between Karjakin and Duda. Let's see what happened. d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to f3, d5, knight to c3, d takes c4. And if you're wondering why I'm wearing this very silly cape, well, it's because we're doing a Twitch stream right now, and we smashed the followers' goal, and I had to wear the cape. So there you go. That's the cape, the Count's cape. e4, bishop to b4, pinning the knight on c3, attacking this pawn, indirectly the pawn on e4, bishop takes c4, allowing this capture on e4. This is actually a very common gambit. White is getting a lot of dynamic play because black is a little bit underdeveloped, but also because these pieces, first of all, haven't developed, but they don't have a very good way to develop. This bishop probably is going to land somewhere on b7, or is going to take more time and land, well, not on e7, on d7, and then on c6. So it's going to take a lot of time for black to finish his development. On the other hand, black's position is also extremely solid. Castle, knight to f6, you don't want to take on c3 and give him more time, more tempis. Queen to a4, check, and attacking the bishop on b4. The only way to defend it is with the move knight to c6, which he does, and white continues with the move knight to e4, pinning this knight, taking advantage of the pin knight, attacking that, and indirectly attacking the bishop on b4. Quite a very strict play by white, but this is very typical, and if I'm not mistaken, this is still theory. This has been played before. Knight takes c6, a b takes c6, this rook to b8 mysterious move. Well, now you understand why he played the move rook to b8, because with the b file open, the bishop on b4 is going to be protected. So it makes a lot of sense. Silly move, looking like a very silly move. Nevertheless, it's a very good move, because in the future, after the exchange of the knight on c6, that rook is going to be very useful. Rook to d1, bishop to d7, bishop to g5, bishop to e7, gift me that pawn, rook to a8. But guess what? In general, whenever you take so many pawns on that side, especially the one on b7, now he also took the one on a7, well, that allows black to just simply repeat the position with the move rook to b8, queen to a7. The queen doesn't have any way to run around, and this game actually ended quite quickly. This is once again the game between Karjakin and Duda. This is a 4-game mini match, so it's no longer, we're in the finals. It's no longer a 2-game mini match. This is a 4-game mini match, and the winner takes home the World Cup. Now, both of these players are already qualified to the candidates, so that's quite big. That's the main goal for which the players are usually coming to the World Cup. Of course, you want to be the World Cup winner, but most importantly, the finalists qualify to the candidates, which a lot of players will say that is more important than that title. It's just you want to make it to the final, and you want to have a chance to challenge the world champion, Magnus Carlsen in this case. Well, this is qualification for 2022, so who knows whether Magnus is still going to be the world champion at that point. He's having a very difficult match in November against Jan Nepomniachtchi. All right, so this was the first game. Now, this game was quite uneventful, but we have a big clash for the third place between Vladimir Fedoseev from Russia and Magnus Carlsen, who was just eliminated by Duda yesterday. So let's see what happened in this one. Magnus starts with the black pieces, d4, knight to f6. There's not going to be any spoilers, but all I can tell you is that watch out for this game, because this one is pretty explosive. d4, knight to f6, c4, g6, h4, bishop to g7. Fedoseev goes for the kill. To be honest, these players I don't think are necessarily super happy for playing for third position. So I think they're just taking a lot of risks and they just want to have some fun. They just want to play some fun games. And that's why Fedoseev starts with this very aggressive approach with h4. Bishop to g7, knight to c3, d6. So this h4 idea is usually aimed against the Grunfeld. So the Grunfeld goes with d5. Now, with the pawn already on h4, if you try to go d5, I'm going to take on d5, and then I'm going to go h5. And that's a completely different situation because my pawn is already on h5. I'm ready to open up the h file. Also, I'm ready to potentially play the move h6 and accommodate the bishop on g7. So that's why white usually starts with this move h4. Now, d5 he decided not to go for, decided to go with d6. And now we're going to have the type of King's Indian, but with this pawn on h4, which generally is considered to be quite good for black. It's not really good for white. Knight to c6, a d5, knight to c6 immediately trying to take advantage of the fact that white is a little bit underdeveloped and wants to put some pressure in the center. White decides to attack that knight and force him out to e5, bishop to e2. Of course, you don't want to play f4 and continue attacking and harassing this knight on e5 because I'm just going to simply jump to g4. And now you see a down side of this move h4. There's no more pawn to go to h3 and attack the knight on g4. This g4 square is extremely weak, so you don't want to play the move f4. He played the move bishop to e2, h5, once again reinforcing the control of this g4 square. Bishop to f4, castle, knight to f3, knight takes f3, g takes f3, and now we have, well, something that Magnus was definitely very happy to see, and that is a very weak pawn structure. This pawn on h4, this is quite typical of the Grunfeld position. White is going to try to open up the position with f4, f5, and checkmate black. Black is going to try to exchange pieces. He's going to try to exchange the queens. If we manage to get into an endgame, well, you're going to have huge problems with this pawn on h4. So, big problems for white strategically. Nevertheless, he still has some dynamic play in the position. Let's see what happens. c6, as I was mentioning, black is getting ready to activate the queen, get some more control over the dark squares on the queen side. Also towards the center, queen to b6 is definitely eyeing that pawn on b2, but also eyeing a lot of control for the center. Queen to d2, take on d5, king to h7, not allowing the move bishop to h6, which would have weakened black's position. You want to keep this bishop. This is the pride and joy of your position. You want to keep it there. a4, knight to d7, a5, f5, rook to a3, knight to e5. So black is saying, okay, you want to attack me on the king side? No. I'm going to attack you on the king side. I'm going to play the move f5. I'm going to open up the rook, and I'm going to put a lot of pressure on you. And to be honest, from a practical perspective, black's position is already extremely beautiful. Bishop to e3, f4, bishop takes f4, another brilliant move by Magnus, just opening up the f file and basically giving up a pawn for a free, or so it looks like. But it's not really for free. The thing is, the only other way to open up the f file would have been to take on e4. Now, the problem with this move is that it allows white to take with the knight on e4. And this will allow the knight to jump to g5, potentially to e6 later on in the game, and still maintain this pawn ready to open up black's position via f5, f4, f5. So you don't want to do that. This move f4 is just a brilliant move. You're giving up a pawn, but in return, you're not going to allow this knight to get activated via the move knight to e4, knight to g5. Quite a brilliant concept, strategical concept by the world champion. Bishop takes f4, bishop to d7, knight to d1. You see he's trying to do something with this knight, probably knight to e3, knight to c4. The thing is that you have to lose a lot of tempies because knight to e3 is not possible. That bishop on f4 is still under attack. The rook takes f4. Oof. Ouch. Rook takes f4, queen takes f4, bishop to h6. Queen to g3, you can feel that Magnus was definitely enjoying this position now. Full control of the dark squares and exchange down. Nevertheless, after queen to f8, this bishop on f4 is coming and the queen is feeling the hit. Knight to e3, bishop to f4, queen to g2, completely locked position for this queen. No way to enter the fray, enter the attack, or even get back into the defense. It's looking really good from a strategical point of view for Magnus. Nevertheless, Here's an exchange down. Rook to c8, rook to c3, rook takes c3, b takes c3. And now, well, you're being taught as a beginner that whenever you're down material, you're not supposed to exchange pieces. The difference in this position is that this queen, this rook, well, and the king also at this point, they're not playing. They're absolutely not playing. And if you decide to go short castle, well, that's going to create not queen to f5. My arrows are not very good. Queen to f6, and then queen takes h4. This pawn on h4 is going to be extremely weak. So white is kind of in a very difficult dilemma. Well, how are you going to play this position? Are you going to try to defend the king and put it to safety by going short castle? Well, good luck with that, because if you give me the h pawn, then this pawn is going to go down the board. So let's see what white decided to do. Queen to c8, c4, b5. Brilliant play once again by Magnus Carlsen. Queen to g1, which was a mistake, because right now you're simply not in time to hide the king from the assault of black's queen and black's pieces. Queen to a8, getting ready to give that checkmate. King to f1, queen to a2. This is brilliant play by Magnus. Knight to g2. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, look at this. Look how ugly white's pieces are. Queen to a1, knight to e1, queen to b2, knight to g2, zigzagging my queen all the way to c1, knight to e1, queen to d2, all the way to d2, it seems like, queen to g2. And now the question is, why not knight to d2? Well, now with the queen on d3, I have the move knight to d3. And this kind of locks your position down. If you take on f4, I'm going to take back on f4. And there's no way to get your pieces back into the defense of the other side, the center and left side. So the bishop on e2, unfortunately, is going to be lost. And that's going to lead to checkmate. So after knight to g2, knight to d3 would have ended the game. He did not play knight to g2. He played the move queen to g2, king to g7, rook to g1, king to f8. So basically getting the king out of any sort of danger position on the h file. Obviously, white is preparing to invade on the g file, if possible, if given the opportunity. Queen to h1. Oh my goodness. White simply doesn't have any moves. This is brilliant. e6, rook to g3, e takes d5, e takes d5, bishop to f5. Once again, we're getting ready to go to d3, king to f7. I'm not in a hurry to do anything. Knight to d7, rook to g5. Sure, I'll take that exchange. Thank you very much. Knight to e5. And at this point, it was Fedoseev who decided, well, enough is enough. I've been definitely put in the history books with this game. You can be sure that this game is going to be in the history books. He decided to call it quits. There's absolutely no way to do anything. There's no way to untangle. Finally, well, you're actually a pawn up. So he decided to resign in a position with a pawn up. I'm not sure if this is a first. Probably it's not a first, but this game is definitely going to make it in the history books. So quite a good win for Magnus Carlsen, and he's getting into the second game of the mini match against Fedoseev with a big advantage. He's going to be playing the white pieces tomorrow. I think he's probably going to try to close the show with a bang, with another victory. Let's see what happens. Anyway, cheers, guys.